Hello, I'm Jen Anderson from the postgraduate team at the Study and Learning Centre in RMIT University. Welcome to the Graduate Researcher Know-How series on academic style. These grammar workshops are designed to inform the choices you make when writing your thesis or dissertation. Remember, you can pause the video at any time in order to read more closely or take notes. In this mini workshop, we're going to discuss useful reporting verbs and other verb tense choices that enhance your academic style. Reporting verbs are the mainstay of the paraphrase. As we discussed in the workshop on academic voice, when you report on the research of others using author prominent citations, you'll need to use reporting verbs. These verbs reflect the writer's interpretation of the cited author's intended meaning. From the reader's perspective, a well-chosen reporting verb helps them to link the ideas of the thesis writer and the authors they're citing. In this way, reporting verbs reflect the analytical perspective of the researcher. Let's briefly review author prominent citations in strong and weak forms. The strong form is when the name of the researcher, writer, or writers are stated. The weak form omits the name of the author. It uses the pronoun they or refers to their findings or uses the passive tense or focuses on the studies. Both forms are useful, depending on whether you seek to name the researcher as a signal of your familiarity with the important research in the field, from your research perspective that is, or whether you need to keep the focus on the research content, that is, the ideas or the findings. We're going to look at 7 examples and analyse them. What function does each reporting verb perform? Read now and pause the video. Please note that all references are located at the end of this video. So, the word explores suggests high-level analysis, synthesis and evaluation skills as detailed in Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives. There's a link at the bottom of this page, or rather there's a suggestion that you type this into a search engine and you'll get some very interesting articles on Bloom's taxonomy and reporting verbs. Now look at this example from Media and Communication. Pause the video while you read and consider the 2 reporting verbs and what their meaning is. The reporting verb offers is most often a positive term that indicates the researcher's support or appreciation for the cited author. An offering is usually an original observation or analysis. The verb examines implies high-level critical analysis and interpretation involving evaluation according to a set of criteria. We can see that the present tense is used because this is very, very important to the current research. Look at this paraphrase from Computer Science IT. Pause the video now to read and consider. Stop. Slide 7, Activity 3, start. This example comes from the same thesis as the previous one. Pause the video now while you consider the function of the reporting verb. The use of have noted points to the researcher's conclusion based on observation or empirical evidence. The term note also indicates that the finding or argument is significant or noteworthy. And this structure, as X have noted, we know that the writer agrees with them. Look at this paraphrase from a computer science IT thesis. Pause the video now to read and consider. The reporting verb "have determined that" implies a definite finding, and the adverb "empirically" is added to alert the reader to the fact that the evidence is derived from observation and experience rather than from theory or pure logic. This present perfect tense, the "have determined that," suggests that the writer considers their finding to be of current relevance. Here's another example taken from the same thesis. Pause the video now to read and consider. Suggested is also a verb that indicates the researcher's final analysis and discussion of findings. It's not as strong as determined. Researchers use it to point to factors or research implications that are of interest to other researchers, and the past tense may be used here because it's a reference to the research method, and we know that in method sections we usually write in the past tense. Now read and think about this example. Pause the video now. The reporting verb "evaluated" suggests a careful examination of data based on established criteria. The reader expects a clear determination of efficacy or some other value. The past tense is used because the research method is being described. Read this final paragraph from a literature review. It identifies the need for a new method, which is the topic of this thesis. Pause the video now and assess the functions of the verbs. In this final example, the PhD candidate puts forward a critical position. The reader recognises that innovative or new research is about to be introduced. The reporting verb "was suggested" indicates recommendations based on research findings, but the past tense tells the reader that these findings may now be questioned or contested. The verb "argue that," together with the linking word "however," gives a clear indication of a counterclaim, and "further reported that" gives more support for this counterclaim. This is an excellent tip sheet from the Study and Learning Centre. You can download it from the Learning Lab. If you click on the link next to this workshop link or make a note from this slide, you can download it and keep it next to your desk so that you can look at it and think how you might analyse what other writers are trying to do when you paraphrase. This is an extract from Carolyn Tan's thesis. Read it and identify the reporting verbs. As you read, notice how she's chosen reporting verbs that develop the story of this research and at the same time position her own research in relationship to the existing body of knowledge. Pause the video now while you read and consider. In order to develop your skills in selecting the right reporting verb for the situation, notice how others use them in research journal articles and theses or dissertations. Start collecting them. Make your list based on what you find in your discipline. Make sure that you're clear about what the word means, because these words reflect the analytical perspective you bring to the reading and to the research of others. Keep the list handy for when you're writing sections related to the literature review or discussion about your research process and or findings. Now let's look at 3 standard academic verb tenses. First of all, the present tense is the standard tense for the literature review. We use the present tense to state accepted facts, to emphasize the currency of the ideas or research, to describe an object, or to state our evaluation of the work of others. Pause the video if you'd like to look at this longer. The present perfect tense is used to emphasize the continuity of opinion or action, a prevailing state that we might expect action on. This makes it a useful tense for marking the gap in existing knowledge where your research will sit. The past tense is used, as we would expect, for events that happened in the past, as in a recount of history. But it's also used to identify research findings or methods that are now open to challenge. The past tense may mark a method that has been superseded by new techniques, for example. When do we use active voice and when do we use the passive voice? The active voice is best in topic sentences where we're making claims or establishing key themes. It also indicates a strong link between previous and current research. The passive voice tends to be used most when processes or methods are discussed, in particular in quantitative scientific studies where the researcher wants to highlight that their work is objective, rigorous, and replicable. It focuses on the what and how, not the who. Let's now look at how reduced relative clauses are constructed. A reduced relative clause is one where that is, are, that you can see in brackets, is removed in order to create a close relationship between the main clause and its complement. Look at example 1. The main clause is the first part underlined. It can stand alone as a sentence. The clause that follows cannot stand alone because it does not have its own subject. If it did, the subject would be the object, that is the last part of the main clause. For example, in this example, techniques. We can leave that is in the sentence, or we can take it away so that the relationship becomes even closer. Pause the video if you want to look at this more closely. In example 2, the main clause is underlined. We can see how the index score is the object in the main clause, and so it's the hidden subject in the following clause, which starts with the verb calculated. Pause the video to consider this more closely. In this activity, take each sentence and break it into its parts, inserting that is or that are and underlining the main clause as in the previous 2 examples. Pause the video now while you complete the activity. This will help you to start noticing these reduced relative clauses when you're reading. In conclusion, we recommend you become sensitive to verb tenses in research articles and theses or dissertations. Underline reporting verbs, present, present perfect, and past tense verbs when you see them. Consider why the writer has chosen these verb tenses instead of others. Circle the verbs that are part of reduced relative clauses. The more you notice, the easier it will be to use these in your own writing. Pause the video while you read the wise advice from a PhD supervisor, Professor Doug Swinburne, and a successful graduate researcher, Taxem Co. The examples for this video are taken from theses and dissertations that are a decade old. Please note, however, that while the content may be out of date, the use of academic style and grammar is not. Some things change more slowly than others. We can see how the choice of a verb tense or a reporting verb can change meaning or at least provide nuance. Think about this as you read the writing of others and start compiling your own thesis or dissertation. Make the most of language to reflect the great research that you're undertaking. Cheers.